boring old men. Chat it up. Coming to you from Bulkhead, Panama.
There we are again.
And we're here again for part two. We're just going to run through the previous three movies that we picked, just in case you missed the first one. But if you did miss the first one, go back to it because it's pretty good, man.
Coincidentally, all our reviews are as long as the movies.
My son Dan, he listened to it on Spotify while he was driving his truck, and he loved it. He said best one yet.
Really?
Yeah.
I told so the girls were they're in playing poker, and then there's Wendy and Grant and Jen, who I play golf with there. And I said, going to do my podcast. I go, look up twoboringsOldmen.com. And I said, you'll love it. I go, you guys come down, have something to say, or whatever.
It's really easy to find. We've got a YouTube channel, Two Boring Old Men. We've got Facebook page, Two Boring Old Men. And then our website is twoboringsOldmen.com. And then from there, there's a bunch of links, Spotify, and I think Amazon Music. You can get it on there as well. If you just want to listen to it. But the YouTube, because we're talking about movies, I'll put the sleeve up of the movie, and in the last
other
because
annotations and stuff like that. Because
I mentioned, the Jaws scene with the zoom, the dolly. I actually put that little clip up without sound, but it was a GIF. Because if you start using videos, it's picked up and you. Taken down.
That's right. Coincidentally, I read after our last podcast, one of the Jaws is on top of a signpost for a junkyard.
Yeah.
So Walt Disney had it, or whoever had it, and it started falling apart. So they just sold it to this junkyard, and he put it up, and it's the actual shark from Jaws, or one of them. I think they had two or something.
Oh, there was a number of them, because they stopped working.
The old days.
The old days, mechanical shark. So, so Jeff's going to mention the last from 5 down to 3, what he picked in the previous podcast, and I'll mention mine, and then Jeff will go in with his number 2.
Yep, my first one is Ken and Barbie. And then Love Letter. And it's funny, I never meant it this way, but those themes that touch base with me. And that would be something on its own. But the cinematography, the script, dialogue, surprises. I mean, so they follow the themes, except the Driver, which I did talk about last week. Driver was pure cinematic greatness. The character build-up, just everything. It had no meaning philosophically, anything like that, but most of mine do. And it's not like I do it for that purpose. It's just I love the movies and these movies, and they just happen to follow, religious or who we are, what is identity, and all this other shit. So Driver, it did have identity associated with it. Like, who is this guy?
And blah, blah, blah. Complete psycho.
Yeah, but he's not a psycho. He has feelings, and he had feelings, but
he's just somebody with a dark side, a very dark side.
Yeah, and you don't know where he comes from or where he goes, man. So he's the man. He's Clint Eastwood. So number 5 had Apocalypse Now. Cinematography. Even today in my feed, I read all the troubles they had with this thing, with making this movie. It was just horrendous. And they have a documentary about making the movie. And that is just as good as the movie itself, to tell you the truth. And then The Driver. So I love
It was called Drive, wasn't it?
Drive.
Drive.
Thank you. And REFN is the director.
Yep.
After that, he did Only God Forgives, and Ryan Gosling's in that as well. And it's funny because at the start, Taiwanese, it looks like a Taiwan. It is a Taiwan, and but that's brutal and freaky. And then there's another one he did called Copenhagen Cowboy, which is on Netflix too right now. And I've watched that multiple times. And I kind of still don't understand it to a point, but it's like dark neon colors. Dark neon colors. Girl enters the room. She's entering from dark. So I like the director. He is fucking great. I love every one of his movies. So Apocalypse Now, Drive, and then Dead Man. So Apocalypse Now is, again, I identify Apocalypse Now more with the Joseph Conrad novel about it's really going down the river deeper into our own heart and our own darkness and what we're capable of, right? So that was, that's a great theme. And all the while showing chaos and mayhem and extreme. Dead Man, was Jim Jarmusch, my favorite director, with this guy, Refn. And that was about death, or going from a comfortable existence to, uncomfortable existence, being thrown into the wild. And then he's he's a dead man walking, and he only has a limited time left. And, and it's just a fascinating exploration of the in-between.
The in-between death, yeah.
And Japanese, I believe, have a thing called mu, M-U, and it means the in-between. I may not be remembering that correct, but even in computer science, this smartest guy in computer science I've ever known, he said the mu is the most important thing. You can have all these things, but it's the in-between that is the most important. And then Zen Buddhists say, after the door closes, another door opens, there's a moment. And that moment is the biggest moment, right? And
aren't you in between the moment you're born? You're kind of in between because you're going to die at some point. So you're in between, aren't you?
Yeah.
So like the final stages,
no, we are, though. You're right.
Yeah.
I mean, we're always in between. And there was these French philosophers who said there's trajectories and plateaus. So throughout human evolution, we've reached a state of static or stasis. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, comes a huge trajectory that throws us off that, and we land on another mesa flat, and then we get used to that technology. And then if you look through the last couple 100 years, how many trajectories have we made? And then when I was working in the studio, for software development, it was all about disruption. And I'm like, well, if we're disrupting all the time, where's the plateau where we can actually solidify ideas before we just take another leap to the next great thing? And we haven't even learned anything from the previous, right? So the in-between has special meaning for me in so many ways. Computer science, French philosophy, Dead Man.
That was with the character called Nobody as well, wasn't it?
The Indian Nobody. Yeah. I am nobody.
There's so many play on words you can do with that.
Well, it's a great story because nobody tells them to go down to this fire where these cowboys are. And one of them is Iggy Pop. He's dressed like a girl. So he's the femme. Right? You're out in the West and you need sex. So, so he plays the woman. Billy Bob Thornton is one of the other guys. And I can't remember the other guy. So Johnny Depp goes down and like, who are you? Who are you with? And he's like, I'm with nobody. Right. And then he sits down and they're like, oh, your hair is so smooth. And so, you just came from Cincinnati. And Billy Bob's like, no matter what I do, my hair is like barn hay. I can't do anything. And then he talks about drinking and he's like, I can't drink liquor anymore. It gives me the shits, and they're fighting, and then they have a gunfight over who gets Johnny Depp as a woman, right? And Billy Bob's like, shoot me! I dare you to shoot me. The guy shoots him in the toe, and Billy Bob Thornton's hopping around. He's like, oh my god, it's like hellfire!
It's a good job Amber Heard wasn't there. She probably would have won hands down. So before you go into your number 2 and number 1, briefly, my 5 down to 3 was all Spielberg movies and kind of all based around my childhood and sort of like early teens.
Interesting.
So it was number 5, I think, was Jaws. I picked number 4 was Close Encounters, and number 3 was E.T. And all blockbuster movies, but all movies that really resonated with me when I saw them, especially Close Encounters and E.T. for different reasons. My number 2 and number 1 has got nothing to do with Steven Spielberg, and they're more recent movies, I would say.
I know you're number 1.
Well, it's funny because Dan, my son, he listened to the podcast, and Chrissy, she watched it yesterday with me, and she guessed number 2 and number 1, and Danny did as well. So yeah. So they know mine. Yeah. Okay, Jeff, number 2.
Did you talk? Are you done talking about the previous?
Yeah, because it's all in the last podcast why I like them and certain scenes from the movies that the various 3 movies that I like. But it was if you kind of lump them all together, it was more to do with movies that resonated with me from a really young age.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So, and movies that I still watch today, even though I know them back to front.
So the next 2 movies are more present, and the other movies are I guess we're old, and the movies are somewhere old. So you're one of the things when I was looking at my list recently, I'm like, why did I choose this? Right. And I told one time with my nephews, I said, why do you want what you want?
Yeah.
Right. Are you being sold something?
Yeah.
Why do you really want this?
There's a podcast there. We've spoke about it on Fridays when I had too much to drink. Why do we like
what we like?
Particular types of music? And people say, well, it stems from what your parents listened to. Well, my parents didn't listen to heavy rock. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And there's me, big AC/DC fan. My sister, Janet, you've met Janet, she likes a completely different genre of music to me. So that throws the parent thing out.
Yeah.
And then it could be, upbringing. Well, the first time I heard AC/DC, I couldn't stop my leg from moving. So there was something in there. Yeah. And so, why do you want what you want or whatever the phrase was? I think there's a whole podcast there with music.
Well, it's just, matter of fact, it's anything like, okay, why do you want a house? But I want a house. You want something. Why do you want it? Right? Are you trying to keep up with the Jones? Why do you need a nice car? Right? We never bought a nice car. I didn't care about cars. I could bang it and give a shit and close the door, walk away. I knew I didn't want the normal American dream. Right. And that happened in my teenage years. And some of these movies I've mentioned and will mention, they come from my teenage years where I was disobedient, anti-authority. I was labeled as a problem child, even though I was in ACT math with all the geeks and stuff. and but they still labeled me a bad seed.
Mhm.
And just because I did, I smoked weed, right? And that shunned me from every social circle except the heads, and the teachers, would discount me,
Hmm.
and so I had, when I was treated like that. And my parents also, they like, don't lie to me. And why do you lie to us? And I'm like, well, if I tell you the truth, you're going to punish me. And they're like, oh, no, we're not. Tell the truth, I punish you. And it's like, why would I ever tell you anything?
Mhm.
Right. So I was anti-establishment a long time.
Yep.
But that's a little bit of teenage angst, but it's lived through it. But it is interesting. You said childhood memories. Mine are philosophical things that hit me when I was in my teen formative years, But then you go to music. I grew up with Johnny Cash and Waylon.
Was that your parents or?
Yep. And I love that music to this day. Not the pop country you hear, Uncle Tupelo, Wilco. Desalondes are a new band. They're not a new band. They've been around, but they sing the songs I like, and it's very much like. So one of my greatest memories is sitting in the living room, and we had the old stereo with speakers on the side, bar in the middle, and the front top, right? And put the album. Mm-hmm. And my parents are in the back in the kitchen with their friends. One's got a banjo, one's got a harmonica, one's got a guitar. And they're singing Johnny Cash, Waylon Jennings, drinking.
So, country band there.
And that has a lasting effect on me through my whole life.
I remember parties when, like New Year's Eve, Mum's sister would come down from London and we'd all sort of like be in bed but not asleep.
Yeah.
It was only kids. And Mum would come upstairs, come on down, and they'd be drinking and smoking cigars and whatnot, and they'd have music on, and it was their music. We as kids were just happy to be with adults at like 1 o'clock in the morning,
Yeah.
But I do remember Joe Loss, who was, I think he was a brass orchestra,
trombone, trumpet,
but
tuba.
it wouldn't be classical music they would play. It would be rock and roll hits, without the lyrics.
Yeah.
So they played Chuck Berry, and maybe that's had a bit of influence on me because of the whole guitar thing. And then there'd be other songs. Dad was also into Deanna Durbin. She was kind of a crooner, Frank Sinatra.
Of course.
A crooner, and Mom would like listen to the Irish music, which
I like.
Could be why I got into big country. There's a Celtic connection there,
I used to listen to Ukrainian gypsy music.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I saw the disc and got it, and I was not disappointed. I mean, Jesus Christ. I love music from all over the world, and so I would play this, people would go to lunch and I'm playing Ukrainian, and people were like, what the fuck is this? It's this.
This is like a typical night out with men in the 90s, right? So you were kind of starved as rock music whenever you went out, because they'd always be playing singles, pop singles,
whenever they filmed the
disco that you went to. Yeah, well, it was like discos, and of course the people that I worked with was into all of that shit. Nobody liked AC/DC, and they'd say, "Why don't you get up and dance?" I said, well, one, I feel uncomfortable dancing. Two, I don't like the record, and I would sometimes walk into bars and I'd hear. At the time, it was the 90s, and rap was kind of just taking off. I know it took off in the 80s, but it was really taking off in the mid-90s. And I'd walk into a bar and hear that and walk straight back out again. I just thought, I won't be able to hear myself talk. I won't be able to hear anybody talking to me. I don't like the fucking music. And I'd just walk out of there and I'd find a pub with a coal fire. And just sit there listening to the crackling.
Well, sometimes silence is good.
Silence is probably the greatest soundtrack of life,
But this country music I listen to, again, it's not Taylor Swift, it's not Keith Urban.
Yeah.
These are guys who are traveling around in bars and there used to be a magazine called Alt Country, and they would list artist after artist who are just traveling around. And these people were fantastic, but they just refused to be on the radio or play to the radio requirements.
Yeah.
And so they live for their art. So I respect that. But the music, I mean, you throw on Johnny Cash and,
We've listened to it like, just so you know, back home on Fridays, we all get together. I know it's Friday today, but you're probably going to be watching this on Saturday if I can get it out in time. Normally on Fridays, we all come over here. I've got a stereo outside, and we kind of pass the phone around on Spotify, and people pick their music. Chrissy always picks Piano Man by Billy Joel.
About 80% I despise.
Yeah. Yeah, commercial stuff. Jeff's not
Francie has like new pop and rap, and here's the thing: I love the old rap. I mean, when NWA.
So Blondie was, is that right? Blondie was really the first, the one that kind of made it mainstream. Is that correct? Or
well, she had a little rap there, but I don't know when Fast Five Freddy came on and all this other shit. But I like the one that Blondie does. There's this one style that just I love a lot, and so Gangsta Grass is a cross between country and rap. So you have banjo, guitar, violin, and a rapist. Not a rapist, but a rapist. And
if I make an edit of that and I put it on TikTok, it will be spelled rapist. So I'll have to watch out for that and make an edit,
But I think it's 50 Cent was on one of the songs.
He stole my name.
And
do you know that?
What?
He stole my name.
Really?
I've been known as Fiddy since God knows when. He was 50 Cent, and then he changed it to 50 Cent. Yeah.
Yeah. Did he get shot though?
I didn't get shot, and I'm glad. I'm glad my surname isn't Diderman, because he don't want to be known as Diddy. Not now.
Jesus. But anyways, there's the style where the music's flowing, right? It's not like up and down. It's just, and it just rolls. And then he raps with it, and he can make his voice just roll. And it's hypnotic, and it's great. And when I hear shit like that, but when I used to program, I always listened to old rap because it would get me going and stuff, I could say F the Police, but, I like the song, but I don't want to have them, the police are the police, and shit like that. But
I never liked, growing up, as I said in the last podcast, I just listened to AC/DC. I wouldn't listen to anything else. And the one band that did come along was Big Country, and I kind of liked the sound of the guitars. It was different. And they use, the old Ebo.
Yeah, and I love that.
They were kind of classed as, their guitars sound like bagpipes. I know for a fact that they never liked that. They never liked, in the music press, the bagpipe sound.
Yeah.
But it wasn't a bagpipe sound.
Well,
it was just using an Ebo. It was different style.
You maybe listen to one where Bon Scott is playing the bagpipes. I couldn't believe it. That is... an artist is one that can take any instrument and just create any type of music out of it. And when you played that, I'm like, holy shit, that's the bagpipes.
He was in a band as a kid growing up in Scotland before he moved to Australia. He used to play the bagpipes in a band, like as a kid, And prior to joining AC/DC, he was a singer in folk bands in Australia, Fraternity, I remember them. But he also used to play the drums as well. And he would often in the studio with Angus and Malcolm jump on the drums because they got the lyrics, and they got not the lyrics, sorry, they got they put the tune down, the riff down. And Bon would get on the drums in the absence of Phil Rudd, and then he'd go away and he'd pull out of his pocket a bunch of lyrics that he'd wrote down on his travels. And he was quite the poet, Bon. And then, he'd have the lyrics to the song at a later date.
It's just amazing.
I know. And again, that is another podcast.
Yeah, no, we can
coming a bit.
We can cut this off, through editing. But like one time, Sue and I are walking down Lansdowne Street in Boston.
Yeah.
And it's by the park, and that's where all the clubs were. Before Hard Rock came in, they turned it all gentrification and shit. God knows what you were going to see in this street. And there was this girl, they just played at one of the small venues, and she's handing out 3-song tracks, right?
Yep.
I go home. There are 3 people, 3 girls, and they all play cello. They came from Berkeley Music. They all play cello, and they play songs with just 3 cellos, and I think maybe a drummer. And there's one song that could bring me to tears. I just love the cello. And for them to do, they covered Led Zeppelin, they do a lot of shit, and that crap I don't care about. But their original stuff just blows me away.
Isn't it brilliant?
Yeah, it's just
power of music. I've been like that. Hans Zimmer. I love Hans Zimmer. In fact, when I was back in England, my 2 sisters, it was my birthday, and my 2 sisters kind of said, we're going out tonight. You're not going to know where you're going. And we ended up at the Birmingham Symphony Hall, and I walked in, saw the orchestra set up, the instruments and the chairs, and straight away I said, Hans Zimmer. It wasn't Hans Zimmer, it was the music of Hans Zimmer.
Dedication.
Played by the Birmingham Symphony.
Was he there, though,
no.
sitting in the balcony or something?
No, he wasn't there, but people, they had a guy on that would introduce each song, and he'd tell you a little bit about the song, pretty much like what we do with the movies. He'd tell you a little bit about each of the songs, and he said, did you know that Hans Zimmer, the first ever record played on MTV was Video Killed the Radio Star by the Buggles.
Which is great, right? That is a phenomenon.
I know.
That only happens once in all of history, and they did it perfectly.
I know it. Well, did you know that Hans Zimmer was part of the writing?
For sure.
And was in the video as a computer geek. I never knew that, so I learned something that night. But talking about music that moves you, fuck me, I have. I've cried many times. There was a show called Pacific. It was about the Americans during the Second World War.
Oh, okay.
And the soundtrack to that is Hans Zimmer, and it is just the most beautiful piece of music you'll ever hear. But, not just Hans Zimmer. I've cried over the Dixie Chicks, believe it or not. Some of their songs.
Even if music...
Sorry, the Chicks.
The Chicks, that's right. No more Dixie Chicks, no more Confederate flag, all that. And I get it. But it's just amazing when an artist can just flip it upside down.
Yeah.
I mean, and sometimes that flipping, not much people think about it, but it's like, okay, if there's good, well, what that introduces, bad.
Yep.
Right? I mean, it introduces it. If there was no good, there'd be no bad. Right? And right. We all be just animals doing whatever the fuck we do, right? But it's just, even the most simplest music that I hear from people who aren't listened to, they have these studio musicians who played with every band in LA, and it's not they did it on stage, they did it in the studio. And it's amazing that these guys, they're trained. and they're good. And they just choose just to be a musician that fills in spots. And Dwayne Allman is my favorite. My favorite blues song is the one he plays. For some reason, I can't remember it, but I'm old. I was just listening to it. And he died when he was 23. And people called him just like an alien. His slide guitar and everything. And then he died at 23 in a motorcycle accident. I am like, holy fuck. When I was 23, I had no talent. I had nothing. I had no direction, no nothing. And this guy, he's playing this long blues song. In the solos, everyone just gets blown away by this guy. But he was only around for a couple of years, unfortunately.
I remember you mentioned, you thought he was an alien. The first time Gary, my youngest son, he was stopping with me, and the River Plate DVD had just come out, AC/DC at River Plate, and there's a track on there. I think I played it here one night.
Oh,
Let There Be Rock, and it goes on for about,
yeah, I know that song.
14 minutes, with the solo and all the rest of it. But Gary, halfway through, watching Angus like shred the guitar and playing to the audience, got up and just shook his head. I can't watch it. He's an alien. He's an alien. I just can't watch it. I just can't take it all in.
You got Eddie Van Halen.
Oh,
shred.
Yeah.
But it's funny. You listen to interviews with David Gilmour, and he says, all I want to do with my lead guitar, and he does lead guitar, I just want to create a melody, right, that takes over. And if you listen to Shine On, You Crazy Diamond, the first part, I mean, I have downloaded the sheet music, and, I got pretty far, but, I don't have the rhythm. So it doesn't sound like him, but it does sound like the blues, like a motherfucker. And you're up on the 18th fret, and working down on the 12th fret and stuff. And for me, because I have no rhythm, it sounds like the blues. And for him, it's Shine On, right? And I just read today, there was a blues musician, and this gets back to the space in between. And he said, it's not the notes you play, it's the notes you don't play. It's the in between that creates that melody.
That is Malcolm Young's genius. He would always say to Angus, hit the bugger. I want it to sound loud. So Malcolm was the driving force behind the band.
Often bassist. He's a bassist, right?
Malcolm was rhythm. When you listen to Malcolm play, it's when he doesn't play, he's the genius of Malcolm. When he doesn't play, so it's the in-between. Talking about the in-between, It's just fucking genius, And when I first went to AC/DC, I was all about watching Angus, if you could spot him, because he was all over the place. And then as the years went by, I was just fixated on Malcolm. And any track I listen to now, when I revisit, I'm just listening out for Malcolm and listening to those pauses.
Yeah.
He just had it. He knew what he was doing. For me, the most underrated. He's not underrated because most musicians love the Malcolm Young.
Keith Richards is a rhythm guitarist,
but most people are Angus, and I think like with Angus, he's a great player. There are better players, but with Angus, it's what he does. He's running around, he's spinning around, and shit. And this is like,
oh my God,
fucking 90
interviews with him, and he's crazy as fucking hell. Yeah. So his music and the way he presents it is his personality. Yeah. I mean, you see it when he's just talking with a talk host.
Yeah.
He's like, okay, fuck, When you think about everyone singing, you sound the same. He's like, fuck that,
Well, the famous quote there was, what do you say to people who said you've made 13 albums and they all sound the same? He said, well, actually, I'll tell them they're wrong. It's 14 albums. That's a famous Angus quote. But we will definitely do a music podcast. And
going back to the blues or David Gilmour, or they mentioned someone else, and it was the in between notes, right? So, you listen to like Sean, he hits one note and he's either doing something with the pedals or the wah wah, which I don't have, right? And maybe that's part of it. I don't know. But it goes back to the move, the in between. And you hit one note. And in this article I read today, it says you hit one note. And if it just doesn't hit you, right? But they said it will take one note. And there is one note. And I think it's, so if I'm thinking correctly, E or D or C. I think it's E on the third string where I've hit once and I had it pressed correctly and it blew me away. Just one note and it just had this ringing sound to it.
Do you know what? Could you hum it? Could you just like?
No. I can't sing. I'm tone deaf, which is, I'm just fucking around.
I ask because of the track Hell's Bells. When they first toured, when they made the album Back in Black, they would start off with Hell's Bells, which is basically the bell coming down and Brian Johnson running out with a big metal mallet striking his iron bell. And Angus was nowhere to be seen. But on the last strike of the bell, as the bell faded out, it was bing. Then all you'd hear is and Angus coming in.
And that's so David Gilmour about Shine On You Crazy Diamond. He was just playing around on the guitar and dun 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 dun, and he goes, "Oh, that's kind of nice." Dun 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 dun, and he keeps doing it, and all of a sudden he looks up and he says, "One of Pink Floyd members sticks his head up, another one sticks his head up," and they're like, "What is that?" And they built it all off that four note. Dun, 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 dun.
Absolutely amazing.
Yeah, it is amazing. Because they're geniuses,
Well, they are, and I think Noel Gallagher, Oasis, says that he explains it as sometimes lyrics are rained down on me. That they're not there, but all of a sudden it feels like they're being rained down and they fill my head and I get it down.
Some people who are Christians say it's a thing from God, right? But there's many artists who had hit songs and they said it only took me 14 minutes to write.
Gallagher. I'm not sure what song it was. I do like Oasis. I'm not a huge fan, but I'm sure there's Oasis fans out there that will be able to tell us,
All right.
Yep. So getting back to movies after talking about music, number 2, I think.
All right. One of my favorite movies of all time. And me and my friend, my parents were away, and we were up all night partying and shit. And about 3:00 on the late night TV channel comes this movie. And 2 hours plus later, it sun's up, and we are totally blown away by this movie. I mean,
so who's watching it with you?
My best friend John at the time, and it's Blade Runner, right? As a sci-fi, but also philosophical, right? So Blade Runner is a sci-fi film, 8.1 on IMDb. It is directed by Ridley Scott, 1982. It stars Harrison Ford, Rutger Hauer, Daryl Hannah, among others. There's others people, and it's made from Philip Dick's novel "Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep?" right? And I read the book too. It's just the concept is
What did you read the book first, or did
no,
you?
the movie first. It blew me away. I had to read the book.
Yeah.
After that, it just I had to get to what Philip Dick was really trying to put across. But I actually think the movie does it better than the book does. This is one of those rare occasions,
Quite really.
yeah, that you really it pushes home. So it in the future, people are living on Mars, other planets. Rich people have left planet Earth. If you're poor, you're just stuck on smog-filled planet and blah blah blah. And there's no animals anymore. They're all killed off. So people have androids of sheep, dogs,
Yep.
owls, so they replace everything with androids. And the main character is Deckard. He's a Blade Runner. And what they do is they go after rogue androids and kill them. Right. And mostly androids who go AWOL or disobey. Right? They're not supposed to do that. They're supposed to be mining planets for us. They should be slaves for us. Right? And in the set, the androids came back to Earth. They were slaves on a far out planet mining shit. And they come back because they want more life. So because they can go AWOL and kind of be violent, and of course they're ultra strong, ultra smart, they got us beat by landslide. They come down for more life, and Tyrell, who makes the androids, gives them a 3-year lifespan, right? So we have an 80-year lifespan, 75-year lifespan, whatever. And but the span doesn't really matter because don't we all want more life? Right? It's a very humane thing that these androids are doing, or comparable to humanity, right? They just want more life. And that's it. We don't want to die. And
Immortality.
yeah, and that reminds me of a funny joke about a Zen guy, a Zen monk who is enlightened. He is dying, and 3 monks come around him and they said, "Teacher, before you go, can you tell us one last piece of wisdom?" And he's like, "I don't want to die." And, he's enlightened, and he still has human emotions, of course. Enlightenment doesn't take anything away from you as a human. And the monks are, "No, give us one piece. I really don't want to die." And so these guys, they really don't want to die, right? So they're just looking for more life. And they know the guy who made them. He's Tyrell. He lives in a pyramid structure that's almost godlike, way the fuck up, or Egyptian-like, right? This thing's huge, and he's way at the top, and he's made all these androids, right? And what would happen? Some of these androids would go AWOL, kill people. So he ended up putting in a very short lifespan that would just take him out. So they want to live a very human right like us. And Deckard stepped away from being a Blade Runner because he felt killing the android was too much like killing a human. Androids have become human. They're conscious and blah, blah. They have memories and blah, blah, blah. And they've seen things we've never seen that they could express, and we just treat them as, disposable, whatever, but they're human.
Wasn't this?
this is where we're getting to in our technology. What is a sentient being?
Yeah, 100%. Now, wasn't there something like that in the movie? It wasn't Alien. It was the second one, Alien 2, which is a pretty good movie.
Oh God, I love all the aliens.
There was an android, and I think it
Was it Winona Ryder?
No, it was Alien 2. This
Okay.
one came later.
Yep.
But one was decapitated, but he saved the little girl from falling out the ship toward the end. And you kind of felt he was a human, even though he had white blood and all the rest of it.
Just predicted Blade Runner. Right. So Decker doesn't want to do it anymore. He's out. Right. Okay. Before you even get to the theme or the characters, the story, the cinematography and the setting, they did futuristic, but they did it with the common brands of the day. TDK cassette tapes, Coca-Cola blimps. They paid a guy $1,500 a day to make it look futuristic and just what you would think.
Yeah.
And that's one of the pluses that a lot of critics come up with, right? So he has a conscience. He doesn't want to kill him anymore, but the police bring him in. They said it's Nexus 8. These guys are the top of the food chain, and they have come back to Earth, and they're violent and dangerous. And Decker doesn't want to do it. And they said, well, if you don't want to do it, then you become one of the little people. And what that meant is they're going to kill them, treat them just badly.
Yep.
Right? And so he's basically forced. Right. And, the themes are identity, consciousness, conscience and empathy, ethics, morality, ethics and technology, humanity or being human. What does it mean to be one? Memories, what's life? And freedom and free will, right? So, this film really captures a lot of that. So, when they first started making the androids, they kind of went crazy. They couldn't mentally survive in an android body. So, what would they do is they'd implant memories. And it was memories of a certain child, but they would take memories of a person, even with photographs, and give it to them. And it was the memories that kept them sane and continuous. Without that continuity, they were just like, what the fuck am I?
Was that to make them feel as though they were human?
It was, they couldn't control them without the memories. Right. And once they put the memories in, which leads me to say they were conscious beings, but they had no past. And you're saying, what am I doing here? And then you freak out, and I have a body, you freak out. But if you give them lifelong memories, that's all you need to say identity. Who am I? Well, that's me. I watch spiders being born and blah, blah, blah. Even to the point where one of the androids of Nexus 8, the cops raid his apartment, find his photographs of his memories, and he wants so badly to go back in and get those photographs. It means everything to them. And they couldn't do it. Right. But so the memories just provide this identity crisis when they had just blank memories or they didn't know what they're.
Yeah, they were filling in the blanks.
Blanks, yeah. So.
Now, wasn't there a remake?
Yes, I love the remake as well.
Who was in that?
Ryan Gosling.
No.
And Harrison Ford, who was in the first one. And he does a great job, and he falls to the same conclusion as the first. It's
So
crazy.
I've not seen the remake. Is it?
It's not a remake; it's a continuation.
Oh, okay. So it's not. Yeah, they don't
Yeah.
follow the story of the first one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there, before the movie came out, the second one, they had 3 little clips done by 3 directors, and there were very short films about Blade Runner 2048, and the one with Jared Leto confronting humans. He's a human, but he makes ultra androids at this point, and they're telling him he can't do it. He says, well, what are you going to do with me not creating all the slaves you need? More than that, he said, there's a crevice. And I forgot what he said, and I had to look up on Wikipedia. He said, there's a boundary around the earth, and we're about to break that boundary, and you want to stop it, right? That movie, a little bit different. Same theme, but continuation. So the androids leader, Roy Batty, Rutger Hauer. And of course, he's a rugby player, very tough fucking guy and shit, right? So
the Hitcher.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
So he goes up to meet his maker. I mean, how symbolic is this, right? So Tyrell is way up in this godlike pyramid. He is basically God building life forms who have consciousness, memories, who strive to want to live longer. I mean, isn't that our situation with God? It's like, God, why'd you kill this young child? Why? We don't want more life. We there's this idealism of that we live into a ripe old age. But, so he goes up and he tricks himself into getting into Tyrell's top level, God level. And when the door opens, Tyrell goes, the prodigal son returns. In biblical proportions, right? Tyrell is God. Roy Batty is his creation. And then he refers to him as the prodigal son.
So, yeah.
It's biblical beyond belief. Or even just existential, right? Tyrell rejoices when he sees them. He's like, God, you've seen things humans never seen. You've done great things in your life. Be proud, right? But Roy's dead on getting more life. So they go through this scientific kind of jargon where they're saying, well, can't we suppress the gene that causes, and Tyrell, no, it creates a mutation and the android's dead before he even leaves the bed, blah, blah, blah. And much like some other physics, once things are going, you have no control. Tyrell said, once you're made and your genes are, everything in place, there's nothing I can do. So he's a god.
The clock's ticking, isn't he?
Right? Yeah, he's a god. He creates this guy. The guy goes to God. He says, well, you made me. You can give me more life. And God said, no, I can't. And there's that theory of creating a universe in the lab. I always brought it up when we talked. And it's the same thing. In theory, if we had the power and everything, we could create a universe in a laboratory. And only for a split second can we look into that universe before it closes up and closes itself, and then its evolution takes over. We're the god of that universe. It could create life forms, and it could be violent, could be whatever it turns out to be. But whatever it is, we have no control. So then you look at, why does God let this young... Maybe God created us and really once he, just like the physics theory, once it's created, he has no, it's up to us, free will, what we do with it, everything else, right? So,
Well, they should really sew that into religious texts. Then the theory you just came up with, because then it might be a little bit. It might be a little bit easier to understand. He doesn't intervene because of X, Y, and Z.
At least,
instead of it's God's will, because that's a copy.
Exactly, right? And it may be just us creating all this good stuff and bad stuff. And God's, the only thing he can do is to sit by the bleachers, right?
Yeah.
And so it was the same for this. So then Roy, after he finds out he can't get any more life, and he's basically going to die soon, and all his other Nexus 8s, there was a group of them, he kills his god. Isn't that amazing? So
he's father. He's creator.
Yeah. This guy was proud. He is the god of this guy. I made you. Everything about you, I made. And Roy kills him. And effectively, he kills his god. Right? Now they're alone. But that's huge, right? I mean, it's like us going up to God and saying, hey, and then you're no help at all. We may not kill God, but we'll have questions of whether we should believe in him or not, right? Or we accept what nature is, and that's it. And that's one thing Roy Batty doesn't do, or the Nexus 8. They just want more life, demanding it, without understanding, like we do. And as you mentioned earlier, we have an in-between.
Yeah.
Birth and death.
Yeah.
He doesn't realize this. This is what humans go through. And he's finding out a very hard way that, it's true for him. And again, it's just, they're humans. Memories, want more life. They just want to see beauty. And they're attacked and constantly tracked. So he kills his god. Right, which is I think is the apex of the movie. Right after that, it's just downhill. So Roy leaves, and Deckard ends up hunting them all down, except for Roy. He's the alpha leader, right? He's losing the battle. So there's this building; it's desolate. Him and Roy are having it out. They're running through things. But it's clear Deckard is just getting, he is, Roy is beyond his capability and everything. And he's running for his life, basically. It's raining, it's dark, and they're in this abandoned building, and he's running for his life. And even when they go outside on top of the rooftop, it's dark and it's raining, right? So one of the things Deckard does to escape him is he tries to jump from one building to the next. Doesn't make it. And he's hanging on to the steel beam. And it's raining. Part of his hand is wrapped because he had a nail put through it by Roy. And he's just hanging on by fingertips, right? And Roy's on the other building. And he easily just hops over.
Yep. And
he's standing over Deckard, right? And he goes, now you know what it means to be a slave and to live in fear. And, Roy's about to die. This guy he killed all of the Nexus 8, except all his friends and family. And it's just him and Roy at this point. And what does Roy do? He saves them and sits them down, and he sits down. And he says there's actually two versions or a couple versions of there's Harrison Ford, his dialogue in his head is playing, and there's another one without any dialogue, right? So the one with dialogue, Deckard's like trying to figure out why did he save him, and he says in that minute he.
So you're about narration. So Harrison Ford speaks throughout the movie
like an over voice, right?
Yeah, no,
like I love her, blah blah blah, or but he's doing his thing, right? So they're sitting on a rooftop. Roy's sitting on one, holding a white dove and petting it, and Deckard is sitting there, tired, injured. He just got saved by this guy who thinks he's going to kill him, right? And so Roy lifts him, puts him on the room, sits down with a dove, and he saves Deckard's life, the guy who's about to kill him. And Deckard's hypothesis is that at that point, he loved life so much, it didn't matter whose life he was saving, but he finally found what living really means, and it's not being these androids come down to demand more life. He saves his worst enemy who killed all his friends, and Deckard's thinking to himself, he loves life more than he ever has, and it doesn't matter what it is, and Roy starts talking about what he has seen. There's this long speech where he goes, I've seen the Tannhauser gates at dawn, and goes through these other things. And he goes, I've seen things you humans will never believe and will never see in your life. He goes, all these memories will be gone like tears in rain. Oh, all these memories will be gone in time like tears in rain, right? Everyone has memories get flooded, and then they just get lost, right? Just like a raindrop gets,
Yeah, I suppose as you get older, I'm kind of lucky. I remember stuff from way back, but I can't remember stuff from last week, and it's always been that way for me, and I do feel really sorry for as you get older and you get dementia, you don't even recognize your own children. That must be fucking horrible.
Yeah, and the only religion I could possibly follow is first Zen, because it really doesn't have a doctrine. There's no Bible, there's no nothing. The only purpose is to reach enlightenment as far as you can go.
Yep.
Then you got other Buddhists where they have, the right speech, right job, blah, 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 almost like the Ten Commandments. The reason I like Zen is because there's no organization. There's no one telling you what to do. You can still do bad stuff and be enlightened, of course, right? And,
is there any punishment in Zen?
Usually you get smacked by a stick because you're falling asleep during meditation or you're not doing it right. They just come back and whack you on the head and wake up.
Sounds very much like my old Catholic style.
Well, it is a little bit, but they don't have this notion about they don't quarrel about what's right or what's wrong. Their only purpose is to get you into a higher state. That's it. If you still rob people and kill people, okay, but you're working on a higher plane, almost like Kill Bill, right? Kill Bill's a smart guy, enlightened and all this, but did a lot of bad shit. So And then Deckard falls in love with an android, and she's special. She is Tyrell. He kept her close, and she does not have timeline. So she could die tomorrow, or she could live 60 years, 80 years, but you don't know, right? But that's being human. I could die tomorrow. I could die walking outside your thing, right? And
Could have died before you got here, and then we wouldn't have heard it.
no shit, my long drawn out fucking. So she loves him, he loves her. She's playing the piano, and she goes, "I don't know if I know how to play the piano or Tyrell's daughter is playing the piano through me, because Tyrell put his daughter's memories in her." So she's questioning, do I really know how to play the piano, or am I playing out memory? Right? So he ends up falling in love with her. They escape LA, and now they're in the wasteland. And one of the last things he says, we don't know how many years we have together. But then again, who does? And that's about it. And then there's the big kind of conspiracy is Deckard could be an android. And the only reason is it wasn't in the first version, but he dreams of a unicorn, right? So there's another Blade Runner who's he's the chief right-hand man, and he doesn't get involved.
Why? What's the significance? Why Blade Runner?
Yeah, that's a good point. I never looked it up, because the original title is just "Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep?" And then they bring in this Blade Runner. So Deckard is human, blah blah blah, but he has these dreams of a unicorn. And in one of the final scenes, the other Blade Runner creates origami through the whole movie, and he creates a unicorn and puts it for Deckard. And everyone says that proves his memories are fake. The other Blade Runner knows his memories and created this unicorn to place for him to say, you're not human. You're an android. And this whole time, you're thinking he's human. He has feelings. There's this and that. And then he himself may be an android. Right? So, again, one, it's a sci-fi movie that just the cinematography blows me away. But conceptually, huge. Right? I mean, especially as we're getting into AI. Right?
When was it made, Ian?
82.
So did you go to a movie theater to watch it, or was it?
No, I just watched it on like HBO or
Have you
something.
ever watched it at a movie theater?
No, but I have all the versions, and I've watched all the versions. And, it's just, again, with like at the time, I was reading Nietzsche and God is Dead and all this other crap, existential literature, all this crap. And then I see this movie in the middle of the night with my friend that is just symbolically talks about all the fucking things I'm interested in, that it just blew me away. And to this day, I mean, if it's on TV, I'm watching it, and yeah. So what is a human life? So we get to this new AI. They have memories, like even the old Siri. We used to sit down, we're drinking, and we'd say, Siri, where were you born? Well, I wasn't really born. Well, where you live? Well, I live at 1 Apple Way, Silicon Valley, right? Oh, so you do live there. Are you really alive? And she's like, well, I don't know. I don't have the information. Are you female or male? I don't have the information. So we're posing all these existential questions, and she's only got half the answers, and the other half she doesn't know what she's talking about.
But as an AI, anything that you ask AI, like Google, which is basically an AI,
Now, yeah,
anything you ask them, it's taking that information. I know it's only a question, but it's still taking that information in as a question. And at some point, they will figure the answer out. Do you know what I mean?
yeah. Well, they're building a quantum computer right now, and they just did a test. And of course, tests are kind of funky because you're testing out its processor power or how many instructions can it do at one time, blah, blah, blah. And the recent test, and again, it's geared for the quantum. And in a couple of seconds, it did as much work. I can't even remember the number of years it would take your laptop. I mean, thousands, right? So this thing is processing, and this is where it's all going with AI and quantum, is that these instructions can be processed so fast that it would take 10 years for your computer to actually figure it out, and it does it in a second. Now you ask it, okay, so now it learns. MIT, they showed the worst images and videos on the web. And what they came to find out, the AI they created was a psychopath. And look this up. They actually created a psychopathic AI.
Because you can't input empathy, I guess. Into...
No, but this is life, right? So if a kid grows up in a gangster-ridden, and this is all he knows, well, he turns into that, right? Yeah. And they just showed this AI nothing but the worst of, and what is it? It's a psychopath, right? And this is where I have problems with judges, and they don't care about your past.
Okay.
I'm just going to listen to you for a while.
Okay, moving on from that. This is my number 2. And I don't think it's going to be a surprise to Jeff. Certainly not a surprise to Chrissy or my oldest son. My number 2 is Arrival, which was made in 2016, but I didn't actually see it until about 2019. Wow. I'd heard about it, but nobody had gone into great detail about it. And then it was on Netflix, and I thought, I may as well watch this. And I'm really glad I did, because it blew me away. Absolutely blew me away. Directed Denis Villeneuve, I think that's how you pronounce his name. Written by Ted Chiang. The screenplay added another, Eric Hesera. Amy Adams, Jeremy Renner, and Forrest Whitaker are the 3 main stars of it. Based on the book, which I believe you've read.
Yes, I did, and I would consider reading it.
Yeah,
again.
They've actually re-released it now, and it's called By the Stories of Your Life and Others. But they put Story of Arrival alongside it now, so people know what they're getting into.
Let me write that down.
Yeah.
I want to make sure I read it, because I think I did. I read a lot. So read Arrival, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, Stories of Your Life. Now, it took 2 watches for me to fully grasp it. And I've since been back to it, and you learn more. The more times you watch it, you learn more. By the way, don't expect when we're talking about movies not to give the plot away or anything like that, because that's the whole purpose.
We should say spoiler right at the spoiler alert. Spoiler alert.
I might add it to
the rest,
the description, for the videos, and certainly.
Well, you can't talk about the movie without why it's your number 1.
Certainly, you can't talk about Arrival without not being able to give something away, you know. But yeah, spoiler alert, I'm about to.
And it may be too late for some of you if you watch our previous podcast.
I wasn't a fan of Jeremy Renner, the guy,
Oh yeah,
prior to this movie. I'd seen him, and probably why I wasn't a fan, I'd seen him in one of the Bourne Identity movies.
but he was in the movie won won an Oscar. He may have won, something, but it's the one where they're over in the Mideast and he's the bomb expert. And
Rings a bell.
And that's where really, and that movie won Oscars, maybe other stuff, and he may have won, and that's really when he came
it rings
out.
a bell. The reason I wasn't a fan is because I was a fan of the trilogy, the Bourne Identity trilogy, until they then came along and said, "Hey, let's make another one." And I think Matt Damon said, "Well, I don't want to do any more." And they got Jeremy Renner in, and I watched it, and it just weren't the same. And it weren't a dislike; it was just, it didn't work for me. So when I found out he was in this, I thought, yeah.
It's kind of like the Bond effect, right?
Yeah.
I mean, there was good Bonds, bad
Yeah.
Bonds.
Yeah, I think with James Bond, you kind of get used. You get used to the new Bond, a bit like Doctor Who. You always get used to the new one as much as you loved, the one you grew up with.
Daniel Craig is great. I mean, he's the one.
Right.
Or I think it might change. I may have read that.
I think they're due another one, and it's a bit like the Mission Impossible franchise now. In fact, the last one was pretty good.
No shit.
Yeah. The last one was pretty good.
Didn't even put it on my list of wait.
No. I actually liked it because the guy that the British actor who was in the Alien movie called Paul.
Oh, Simon Pegg.
Simon Pegg, because
Because
he's
they
been in
said-
most of them.
Well, he's fantastic.
Yeah.
Did you see The Inheritance?
The Inheritance.
It's on Netflix,
Mhm.
and he is in it. He's one of the main characters.
Is it a horror movie? It rings a bell.
I can't say. I mean, really, it's the father's dying. The girl. We're getting off on another movie.
All right.
Yeah. No, it's on Netflix, and if you start it and then you realize you watch it, but it's a great movie. It's a great, different type of thriller, I guess, or
I'll
who done did I, what do I do? Moral code, blah blah blah.
Yeah. I'll check it out. But he's been in some great movies, Simon Pegg.
I love him. He's
I
funny
think
as hell.
One was called Journey's End, where they do the pub crawl.
The World's End.
The World's End.
Yes. Oh God.
Well, Journey's End was a pub that I used to go to in Birmingham. That's probably where I got confused. So that was good. The other zombie movie he did, where he was with the big guy,
Yeah, I just saw him in a movie, and he did a great job.
Yeah.
Black Cab, and that's on Netflix.
Oh, okay.
Or maybe not. No, but it's real. That's kind of a thriller, serial killer type thing. But what is the name of the?
I can't think. But there's a famous scene where they're in the pub and they're fighting the zombies to the tune on the jukebox. They're actually going in rhythm. And I think it's Queen.
Is this The World's End?
Queen. No. This is the other
The-
zombie movie. World's End. They're kind of like droids, aren't they?
I can't.
They got white blood and all the rest of it. The zombie movie with him and the fat guy, he's just he goes to work every day, and the fat guy stays at home playing video games.
Yeah.
And the next thing you know, they're overtaken by zombies.
Yeah.
It's really fucking good.
It is.
It's a comedy.
I'm disappointed because I just read the other day list of the best zombie movies,
Yeah.
and that was in the top 10.
Oh, he was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he was in that cop movie where he was a
he
cop.
was a cop. Yeah.
That was fantastic. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah,
great.
really good.
Great humor.
Yeah.
I mean,
With the one that where he's a cop, The villain in that is actually somebody that played James Bond, and I can't think of his name.
Oh, I know. Yes.
Yeah. I can't think
Not
of his
Bronson
No.
or Branson or yeah. Wait. We're
But
old
he-
men,
he-
so
he-
we can't trust our memory.
He didn't last long as Bond anyway. But
Yeah.
funny. that connection.
Tim something.
It's not Timothy Dalton.
Oh, that's what I was thinking.
Yeah, it's not Timothy Dalton. I may be wrong. Maybe he didn't play Bond, but I've definitely seen him before.
Yeah.
But nonetheless, good movie. Back to Arrival. For me, I'm fascinated with time and stuff like that. In fact, some of my backups for my top 5 was the complete trilogy of the Back to the Future movies, because I just think they're fun to watch, and also I would love to have been in the room when they provided the script or the screenplay to the people that was going to fund this movie about a boy having almost an incestuous relationship with his mother, because that's what happens in Back to the Future. He has to date his mother.
I know.
So,
Time travel.
Calvin Klein.
There's no doubts about it. And, we talk time travel,
Yeah.
and I've read about it, in quantum physics and in my youth and shit like that.
Mhm.
And then we're watching a show like Bodies on
Yeah.
Netflix, which was great.
Yeah.
And she starts getting, well, how can he exist? And she starts going, and I'm like, yeah, don't. I told her, don't even go down that rabbit hole.
You definitely do go down a rabbit hole when you start talking about time, but it's good.
The paradox.
You hear different theories,
Yeah.
and that's what I liked about Arrival so much. Like first time round, I thought, hang on a minute, because you saw the main character, the linguistic expert, played by Amy Adams.
Yep.
Amy Adams.
Great actress.
Oh yeah, really good.
She was in Julia and Julia.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
She was in one on Netflix recently, and it was where she was living in an apartment, and it was a bit like the old James Stewart movie. She witnessed a murder,
Yeah.
I can't remember the name of the old Hitchcock movie now.
But that reminds me of the girl in the window watching the girl, that one where it's Kirsten Bell. And she goes, I'm only having a glass of wine. And it's a wine glass that holds a whole bottle.
We watched that, and I thought it was, it was pretty
funny.
good.
Yeah. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, with this, so like I watched it first time round, and if you've watched it, and like I say, there's going to be spoilers, you see Amy Adams having flashbacks, but you don't realise they're not flashbacks until kind of the movie ends, really, unless you guessed it. And that's what I found fascinating. It was almost like watching the movie with Bruce Willis where he's got the little boy, I see dead people.
Yep.
You watch that first time round, and when the twist comes at the end, you think that's bullshit because he was sat down with his wife having dinner. But when you watch it again, you see, yes, he was sat at the table, but there was no interaction between them. And this is why I had to go back to
Some
Arrival.
people got it. I've talked to a couple people, and
some
they get
people
it right away.
I sussed out an old movie with, God, what's his fucking name?
We are old men. Our memories are...
Shutter Island. So I sussed that out where many people didn't. And the only reason I sussed it out is because it reminded me of an old movie that I saw with Ray Liotta, and it was kind of very similar.
Yep.
Ray Liotta was at a hotel or some sort of motel, and people kept getting bumped off.
Yep.
Because there was a storm somewhere and there was a load of people.
Yeah.
And it was very similar to that, and that's how I kind of sussed out Shutter Island. In this, I didn't suss it out. And
no, I think it's, if you're a top level physicist, maybe, or a linguistic expert,
Well,
maybe.
that's where the language comes
But,
into it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So the whole
Sorry.
language thing comes into it because, and I learned through this movie that if you learn a different language, say like you learn Spanish and you become quite fluent in it, you begin to think differently. You will think in Spanish, and it will be totally different to the way that you think if you're thinking in English.
Exactly. There's linguistics, and there's one head guy, and then there was, oh God, a philosopher who talks about power, and it's the words.
Yeah.
It's the words that
the
creates
brain
the
fires
power.
completely differently. As if you're thinking about something in English compared to when you're sort of like talking to somebody in Spanish, because if you can speak Spanish and hear it back and understand it, your thinking is completely different. And this is about learning a new language, this movie, and it's the language of the alien beings inside.
Yeah, didn't they send things down across the globe?
There was
just
7 of them.
Yeah, they're just capsules.
7 heptapods, I think they're called.
And I think the funny thing is 7 is related to Christianity, I think, or something. But
7 Sisters.
Yeah.
The play. I've got to tell you about that as well.
It's also important in craps.
Yeah. Well, they class it as a lucky number, don't they? Lucky number 7.
Oh,
no. So for me, it was the whole language thing and her being able to understand what they were saying. It was that whole process, because all it was a series of symbols coming up, and she had to try and figure it out. And then it was about trust too. She had to get to the stage where she would take the protective hazmat suit off and show herself to them to say, listen, we mean you no harm. We're here to learn,
Oh, so they wouldn't let anyone in unless they were
I think,
authentically.
I think what it was, because they know what our global governments are like. Our global governments just want all the good information off them so they can create weapons and whatnot.
Yeah, not here. Maybe next time. But the drone thing has gotten out of control. Right? I mean, it's stopping planes from taking off. That's a federal,
it's a federal offense.
That's it. And they're still. But we have to talk about this.
We definitely will. The latest on that is, and these are just theories out there, that they're American. The American government are refusing to tell the public what they are, but they know what they are.
So that's why they didn't react at first. It's not, you don't have to worry about it, right?
Well, I've always thought it's a little bit weird that they're not shooting them down.
Yeah, but
Now,
didn't
why
it
would you
happen
shoot
in
your own
Europe?
down? It happened in England, and it's come back again in England.
Is it an American base over there at all?
It is Lakenheath, an American base where it's happening. Now, here's the thing. This is, I watch a guy every night. He does a live show every night, and he gives you updates, and that saves me searching through Twitter for new videos and stuff. He finds them all, and he's brilliant.
There is a Reddit UFO.
Yeah.
And it is fantastic because today I went on and people were showing all sorts of different pictures because they, I mean, probably thousands of people have captured pictures. And she goes, and she's like, that's bigger than a school bus or something, that's not a drone.
The thing is with pictures and videos of this drone thing is that you half the time you don't know what you're seeing. You're just seeing a bunch of lights in the sky. There's also a webcam now for New Jersey, and it's a live webcam, and it's just the camera pointing out over the ocean, and it's actually live. And I watched it the other night, and then I thought, wow, what am I fucking doing?
You're watching, not even grass grow. You're just watching.
Yeah, I was just watching it, and I just thought, what am I doing? Even if I do see a light in the sky, I don't know what it's going to be. Could be a plane, could be, planet, you know.
Yeah.
But yeah, this guy is very thorough. Thomas Fessler, the one I said looks like Neil. He's really thorough. And anyway, one of the
He'll be stifled just like Doctor what's his face for the Wuhan lab.
Oh, Fauci, yeah.
He'll be. If the government
Well, yeah.
sends him out, he'll be stifled on what he can
I
say.
think what it is with the spokesperson, I think for the White House, John Kirby, he came out and said basically what people are seeing in New Jersey are manned aircraft. That's the information that we're getting, and so completely dismissed the thousands of videos that are out there that are clearly showing drones.
But even that, when New York City had to cancel a flight because of that manned aircraft,
Yeah.
that guy should have been arrested
He should
as
have
a federal offense.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And the fact that nothing ever came of it, you know, it just.
He actually did a U-turn, Kirby, because it weren't just the public that was up in arms, public from New Jersey. It was, you know, the mayor of New Jersey.
Yes, New York mayor now. Yep.
Yeah.
I read that today.
Politicians.
They want drone radar.
They do. So Chuck Schumer came out, I think it was last night, and he's putting a bill in where he said, we know that the military have got a drone that can pick anything up, where it's coming from. And let's not forget, the US government can track something coming out of the ocean all the way to the orbit of the moon.
Yes.
And yet we don't know where the drones are coming from. Donald Trump has come out today and said Joe Biden knows where they're coming from.
I read that.
The US military know where they're coming from. They're not telling the American public, which I find very strange. Now, here's the new theory. The new theory is that these drones are American and they are tracking a dirty bomb or chemicals.
Well, that's it. It's about detection.
Yeah.
And
But then why would they do that at night? And why would they have their lights on these drones?
Wouldn't matter, right?
Yeah.
It's not like they're ghost hunters where they
No,
need to
I
be
know,
at.
yeah.
You know.
And why are they over England as well? Now, somebody did a phone call to this one of these shows that I watch, and they said that they was warned about a nuclear warhead that had come from Russia.
Yeah, there's a certain number of missing nuclear, and they have the number and what country they belong to.
Yeah.
But at this point, there is like 7 or something. I don't know.
This makes the most logical sense to me, that these drones are basically just sniffing out areas where they think it may have been moved to, this nuclear warhead. Now, they may have got intel that it's near an air base in England. Yep. This is why there's drones in England. They may have got intel that it's around the New Jersey area. That's why we're seeing them in New Jersey. But you just
the
don't
most
know.
populated area in probably the whole United States.
Well, if I was a terrorist, that's where I put it.
Of course.
You know.
Yeah.
And also that Mayorkas, he's the guy that's in charge of the borders, and he made a right fucking pig's ear of the borders, and now he's coming out and parroting what the guy for the White House said. They're mostly planes.
Fuck that. You know. Okay. One thing. Would manned aircraft, and if it is a drone of some sort and a guy is driving it, I still consider it a manned aircraft because unless AI is doing it or something, right? Mm-hmm. So if the guy's not physically present into that whatever object it is, but he's still flying it and controlling it, and then.
But then it's a drone.
But then they're saying, if they came out and said it's a manned aircraft, and I'm like, so I could create my own flying device and just fly around the sky, and there's nothing wrong with it.
There's a lot of buck passing as well. They're saying we haven't got the authority to do that. We need to get a bill passed, and Congress have to agree on that, and then the FAA have got different rules and regulations.
Yeah,
and
hang yourself at that point. Yeah.
Oh yeah, other people are coming out and saying, this is just a way to ban drones because they don't want us up there seeing what they're doing. And, you know, if enough people say, hey, shoot the drones down, they may create a bill where they ban drones completely. You know?
Yeah, I could see that because in the least you can get LiDAR. Right, we know this for a fact, and you can. Yeah, I know. I'd like to do it for my
compared to a $40 drone.
All I
like
want is
LiDAR is mega.
All I want. I sit out on my balcony at night, and I just want to see all the activity of the animals. But it was too expensive. Yeah, because we do have.
You could possibly do that with a drone. Just get an infrared camera,
that's right.
a heat sensor.
Heat sensor. And that's a lot cheaper.
Yeah. So I think you could do it with a normal drone. In fact, by the way, I was going to get a drone, but I decided to buy a podcast. Now, some people out there might be saying, "Fucking hell, you should have got the drone."
Yeah, anyway. We're going to be here. Okay, I lost that, but go ahead.
Yeah, getting back to the whole language thing. So Louise Banks, she plays Amy Adams. She has to learn this language, and because she pretty much learns a new language, you know, we said before that you think differently. That's the whole point of it. That's the whole point of them coming to her, knowing, or I know she went to them, but it's the whole point. We've got somebody here that can figure out what we're saying. So we're going to give her the gift.
Well, I read the other day, you know, just trivial facts. And there was a guy they called upon to decipher, I think, some of the petroglyphs and, you know, and it's the same thing. I mean, no one could make sense out of it. And, you know, you had this linguistic expert, and he comes in and then succeeds. You know, but you know, it's interesting, and I have no clue. But how do you start? You know, how do you start? Say, okay, I'm gonna. Is it like a puzzle where you start here and then you do, and then you realize, well, that can't be it, so you start somewhere else?
It was a struggle for me when I first saw her, and then she sort of like made pictures of the symbols that, you know, they were putting on the glass. And by the way, that movie, when you watch it, it's brilliant. You know, the way that it was directed. It's almost like Letterbox, you know, like the movies when they go into a letterbox. Yeah. And from the very start, where Louise Banks is in her apartment, she's looking out the window, and the window kind of fills the screen, and it's very similar to the screen inside the spacecraft. Also, when she has what we perceive to be flashbacks, and she's in hospital with her daughter, who is now a teenager. I don't know whether you noticed it, Jeff, but the camera follows her around the hospital, and she's walking in a perfect loop.
Oh, no shit.
Yeah. So you find this stuff
snake
after
eating its own tail, sort of thing.
Well, it's the whole non-linear thing, and you know that the symbols are many, many words, but it's just one symbol to us, but it's many, many words, and that's where I think the director said, let's get her walking around in a loop and see if people pick up on that when they're watching it.
And that's funny you mentioned that. So, you know, I'm trying to learn Spanish, and it is, so I watch movies that speak in English and with Spanish subtitles. You know, and again, one of the complaints against English language, it's too detailed. It's too just, you know, and it's a crossover from Germanic to something else. Blah,
I've got
blah.
Examples here for me enough.
And so I'm watching the movies of the Americans are saying this long sentence and stuff, and it is more detailed than what the subtitles. The subtitle says bien. And that was it. And I'm like, holy shit. I mean,
It is,
And then you go back to the point that you made earlier, where languages influences your thought. So learning English and having versus Latin languages, Latin languages are similar, blah blah blah, and they're simpler than English,
Yeah.
and but we think in English, and that means when we're speaking about a good time, we'll say something much more complex than the Latin.
It may also be like language, depending on what part of the world you're from. And they're called cultures, aren't they? If you're from a certain country,
Yeah.
you've got a different culture
no.
than somebody like me from England or Jeff from America.
But even that, you have cultures inside of cultures.
Yeah.
Like United States has Cajuns,
Well, this
Hollywood. blah,
is sort of like the point I was trying to make with the movie Arrival. It's not just learning new languages; it's learning local dialect as well.
That's it.
And the example that I give here is, so like the bun that you put a burger in between.
Yep.
What do you call that?
A hamburger,
What do you call the bread?
a bun.
A bun, right? Now in England, because we have got different names for different objects, even different times of the day. In various parts of England, this small little island. So, for example, it's not called a bun in most of south of England and Wales.
Wow.
It's called a roll.
Okay, I can see that.
In Greater Manchester, Lancashire and Merseyside, it's called a barm, BARM. But the offer weapon thing scares the government. So when she deciphers it, and Forrest Whitaker is the main man of the government in this movie, they're thinking, shit, they're talking about weapons now. We've got to take action. And then she spins a story to Forrest Whitaker to buy more time.
Yes, because it's a ridiculous leap.
Yeah.
Just because they make
Yeah.
they just say weapon doesn't mean they have.
But that's I think that's the kind of message there. That's the way that we think. We're thinking about it in our language. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, protect us.
She knows it's something else because she knows that they're here to give us a message. And off a weapon, although it sort of like scares her at first, have I been duped here? To buy more time, she says to Forrest Whitaker, because he said, we need answers and we need them now. If not, we're going to shut it down and we're going to take them down. And she says, in the 1700s, Captain Cook landed on the island of Australia and saw a kangaroo and said to one of the Aborigines, what's that? And the Aborigine answered, kangaroo. And she said, do you know what kangaroo means to Forrest Whitaker? And he said, no. And the answer she gave Forrest Whitaker was, kangaroo means I don't know. And Forrest Whitaker took that as, wow, okay, so we don't know the message of, the weapon message.
At that point,
He gave her more time. Then she turns around to Jeremy Renner when Forrest Whitaker leaves the room, and she said, I just made it up. It was bullshit. But it was just to buy more time.
Yep. Yeah, because there's no context. It's just a sentence without context,
Yeah, it is. Now, what would you do? Because throughout the movie, I'll mention there's flashbacks. But we learn that they're not flashbacks. It's she's seeing her future, and this is the gift that they're giving her by her learning the language. She's able to see the future. And even though it's a very personal journey because she sees the birth of her daughter and the death of her daughter, what would you do in that situation? Would you try, okay, I'm going to have a child and that child is going to die before me? Would you try and avoid having that child from the point that you knew it was a message from the future?
Yeah.
It's a weird one. It's a real, because it's like dogs. I didn't really want to get Ripley, the dog that you can hear barking, because I had a dog for 10 years and his death hit me like a ton of bricks. And I vowed never, ever, I don't want to go through this again. But then you think, well, you're giving them a life. Somebody else could have come along and got Ruby, your dog, got Ripley, and treated them really badly. And you know that you're not going to treat them really badly.
Yeah.
So you're kind of giving them a life, and you know they're going to go before you. Mind you, the older I get, I think, well, maybe that's not
My dog might outlive me.
Yeah. So
Thank God I don't have a parrot.
So yeah, I'll throw that one out there. What would you do if you could see your future? And this is what Arrival does. It throws up so many questions of morality, and ethics.
But even okay, so there was one movie where the reason the aliens are here and we can't see them, and the reason is they travel in the fourth dimension, right? Time being the fourth dimension.
Yep.
And there's a famous mathematician book, very small, and it starts off with people who live in a point, and people who live in a line, and people who live in a plane existence. And the fact is, if someone visits you from a higher dimension, they just appear. Because your model and how you see the world just can't see it. Mm-hmm. And what you just said, so the end of this movie, and it's an independent movie, blew me away because it really brought a lot of this, science and shit forward. So he finally meets the alien, and the alien sits down and says, "What would you do if you could have everything instantaneously?" And, and these guys can travel, and then because they travel in time back and forth, and that's where they exist, there is no future and there is no past. And they can already see what's going to happen and back and stuff. And everything is now to them. And that was an important question, which you just asked, our audience of thousands.
Yeah.
Well, millions. It's the same question. What would you do if you could have everything at your disposal and instantly?
It doesn't sound really inviting.
No, it doesn't.
Do you know what I mean?
Well, we're humans.
Apart from
it's scary.
Obviously, you don't want to sort of like stand in line forever, waiting to buy a ticket or whatever. You want it to, I want this quicker. Flying is another thing, takes me over 10 hours to get to England when I go back. God. And I'd love it if they could just shorten that a little bit. Even, an hour, I wouldn't mind, sitting on a plane for an hour. But then nobody would buy business class. If they...
It'd wipe it out.
It would completely wipe it out. And that's how the airlines make their money, business or first class and all the rest of it, and add-ons. So for me...
and then going back, so like in this other book I was talking about, if they live and think in four dimensions, and if Arrival they do too, what is the shape of their language, right?
Well, it's non-linear. They call it non-linear. She refers to it as non-linear.
It's 3-dimension.
Well, yeah. It's like.
Well, we live in the third dimension.
We write from left to right, okay? Yeah. And the right being, by the time we finish a sentence, that sentence that we're heading towards is our future. Yeah. The minute we start writing is the very second we start writing is the present. The second letter we write, then the first letter is the past. Like, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
With them, there was no such thing.
Yeah.
It was all in one, and this is the gift that they gave her.
Mm-hmm.
And-
And that's and that's my point is, we're 3-dimensional beings, but we read 2-dimensional pages.
Yeah.
So, is there any correlation? Fuck if I know. But if I just project that to a higher dimension, a 4th dimension being would have 3-dimensional language.
Yeah.
Fantastic, right? It blows your
It's-
mind.
It's superb, and this is why a lot of people out there that sort of like just fully say, I do not believe in aliens. And the excuse they normally give, it would take them thousands and thousands of years to get here. But
And we're talking
that's-
aliens as sentient beings.
The greys.
Yeah.
The
Because right now NASA is just looking for microbes
Yeah.
or any
I'm on about the
primitive-
whole UFO thing. Who are they manned by? They must be manned by a form of intelligence. And then, like when you read the stories of abductions, it's your classic grey with your almond eyes and all the rest of it.
For whatever reason.
Well, my argument to that is, particularly if you watch this movie, we're thinking about time. These critiques of aliens haven't visited. They're thinking about time from a human perspective. They're not thinking about time from their perspective, from the alien perspective. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Which is what this movie does. And that's why I love it so much. It really opens your eyes. And if you're open-minded, this type of film my dad would never, ever watch. Because
Yes.
he'd say, stupid.
It's not as exciting, say, like as 4th of July and
Independence Day,
or
yeah.
Independence
Yeah,
Day,
there's
and
no-
all those.
Yeah.
But it does give you pause and
Yeah.
think about things.
Yeah, it is not. It's not a Star Wars. It's not a Close Encounters. It's none of
And it got high ratings too.
It
through
did,
the
yeah.
roof.
And I didn't see it. Came out 2016. I didn't see it until 2019, and kind of beat myself up. When I watched it, I thought, "Fuck me! Why have you been avoiding this? Isn't it weird? That a movie that you avoid for about 3 years makes your top 5 in
Yeah.
movies."
Yeah.
And it's really strange, but
Yeah.
all in all, if you've not seen it, hope I haven't spoiled it for you, but do watch it. It's a fantastic movie, and
Yeah.
my number 2.
Jeff and Bob are 2 old men, and they converse over beers and whiskey. 2 expats who live in Panama. Jeff from the USA, Bob from the UK. 2 boring old men, yeah. 1 American, 1 a Brit. 2 boring old men. 1 American, 1 a Brit. Talking to the masses, yeah, while sipping from their glasses. Come on. They wanna reach round the globe with witty humor and deep dives. No topic is off the table. They'll shoot from the hip and call a spade if they see fit. 2 boring old men, yeah. 1 American, 1 a Brit. 2 boring old men, yeah. 1 American, 1 a Brit. Talking to the masses, Panama and beyond, while sipping from their glasses. Come on now. From UFOs to ghostly tales, politics or spirits and ales, diving deep with no confusion. The gift